Good afternoon. Or, well, it's 11 here, so it's almost the afternoon, but we're getting there. I'm waking up. You're probably being more productive than I have ever been in my life, so good for you. Keep it up. What's going on, everybody? How's it going? I'm Miles, and I shaved off my beard so that it would stop pushing against the bottom of my mask when I go to work. So if you have a problem with me looking like a particular star from a particular style of movie from the 1970s, I would suggest that you continue to wash your hands and wear a mask when you go out into public settings. Thanks. Today I'm back with a quick lesson. I've been getting a lot of people asking me about doing a rundown, just like overview of the song Big Poppa that I had previously done a cover of, I don't know how long ago. Just a quick snippet of that song from Notorious B.I.G. And so we're gonna check that out today. But in order to do that, we also need to check out the song that song originates from. And that is the song Between the Sheets from the Isley Brothers. So let's get into all that right now. Here we go. All right, so to get started, let's go over the Notorious B.I.G. track Big Poppa first, because that's a little bit of a simpler construction as far as the chord structure is concerned. And where we're going is starting with what would be F major 7. Now, you could play this a couple different ways. There's no wrong way to play it as long as you're playing the chord itself. But the easiest way would be to take your bar chord shape and play from the 8th fret on the A string, play the 10th fret on D, but also the 10th fret on B, and then your second finger on the 9th fret on the G string. Now, if you're not savvy with your bar chords, an even simpler way to play this F major 7 is to play from the 8th fret on A, but now play the 7th fret on D, and then play the 9th fret on G. And that'll give you an F major 7 shell chord. Now, the way that I like to play this chord is to build off of this F major 7 and add the 9 in there as well, giving me a major 9. I think that melodically it complements the chord that follows after better, but it's not mandatory. You don't have to play a major 9 chord. But if you did, it's that F major 7 chord just with this note on the B string being added. Now from F major 7, we're going to be playing E7 flat 9. And in this case, we're taking that same concept that we had before for F major 7, the 3 notes here, but now we're going to be adapting it to what would be E7 down here from the 7th fret of A, 6th fret of D, 7th fret on G. So that on its own is an E dominant 7 shell chord. But what we're going to be adding is the flat 9th, which is going to be this note on the 6th fret of B. So it's got a awkward tension to it, but in the context of going from F major 7 to this chord, it's very complementary. Now from there, we're going to A minor 7. As far as A minor 7 is concerned, you could play it in open position by playing your A minor chord shape minus the 3rd finger, so that the G string is open. But in the context of where all the other chords exist, we're going to be going from the 5th fret on low E, while also playing the 5th fret on D, G, B, and high E. So the way that I usually go about playing this chord normally is to use my 2nd finger for the low E string, 3rd finger for the other remaining strings. If that seems like an awkward positioning of your hand to go for, that's fine. You can also take your bar chord shape and just take away what would be the note where your pinky is, so that now you have G on the D string on the 5th fret. I think that playing the minor 7 chord in this context makes more sense, because right after we play A minor 7 here, we're going to be going down to G minor 7. And you can kind of mimic what the bass line is doing in the song as well in this portion of the chord progression by just throwing that chromatic note in there, the G sharp. But our G minor 7 is the same thing as A minor 7. So even if you want to play it as a bar chord, it would still work that same way, just going from the 3rd fret. But after G minor 7, we go to C9. So that's taking the same shape that we had for E7 and just stemming it from the 3rd fret of A, 2nd fret of D, 3rd fret on G. Now to make it into a 9 chord, we're throwing in the 9th on the 3rd fret of B. So altogether what we have is going to be so you would do that whole section of chords, you'd go through that twice. So straightforward enough. Now what happens next in the second half of the whole chord progression is that instead of starting off with our F major 7 or F major 9, whatever your taste may be, instead of starting with that chord, we're going to be starting with a B7 flat 5, otherwise known as a half diminished chord. So for this one, while there is a couple different ways you can go about playing them, they tend to be more complicated to try to play it in different configurations. In this case, what we're doing is going to be similar to what we had for the minor 7 chord, but it's going to be the 7th fret on low E and the 7th fret of D and G, and then the 6th fret on the B string. That's our flat 5th. So again, it's got that similar tension that we have in our E7 flat 9 because it's the same note. So now it's the same chord progression that we started with, but instead of starting from F, we're starting from B. So we have and instead of playing the entire chord progression through a second time, on that second repeat, we have a series of octaves. So if you were to play the single notes, you would be going from the 9th fret on D down to the 7th and back, and then from the 5th to the 7th fret on G. But because we're playing it as octaves, what we're doing is actually just doubling those notes. Now, you don't have to do this sort of hybrid picking thing where I'm plucking the D string with my pick and then plucking with my second finger on the B string. You could strum it if you want. It's just a matter of what kind of attack you find to be more appropriate for it. The main thing is just to make sure that that string in between those two strings that you're fretting isn't ringing out. So what we have all together is going to be So those are the chords that you would use if you were playing through the notorious BIG track, Big Poppa. Straightforward enough, and it's just looping that same thing throughout the duration of the song. However, if you want to play the original song Between the Sheets from the Isley Brothers, there's a couple more sections with a couple different chords going on in there. So the part that we just went through would be considered to be the verse in that song. So now let's check out what would be the chorus. Now, as far as all the chords that I'm mentioning in this video, basically It's what I believe would be the most fitting voicings for guitar, whether it be accompanied by a full band or a solo performance on guitar. It's not necessarily what the guitars are doing in the recording. So don't attack me in the comments if you're like, hey, wait a minute, that's not what's on the song. Because, yeah, not trying to replicate the original recording. But anyway, going through the chorus, we're going to be starting from what would be D minor 7. So, sort of the simplest way to play D minor 7 would be to go from the 5th fret of A, 3rd fret on D, and then the 5th fret also on G. You could turn this into a minor 9 chord by throwing in that note here on the B string, 5th fret. And then from there, we're going to be going to G7, which we're taking our dominant 7 shell chord shape and just moving it to the 3rd fret of low E. So 3rd fret of low E, 2nd fret of A, and then the 3rd fret on D. So you could keep D minor 7 simply as this, and then go to G7, and that'd be fine. But if you want to expand on those chords, that would be D minor 9, and then we could have G7. Well, not G7. We'll have it turn into a G9 because we're going to be taking that same G7 shape, adding the 2nd fret on D, and then the 3rd fret on the B string. So that would give you G9. And then from there, C major 7. So again, taking our shell chord shape, but now the 7th in the chord, rather than being dominant, is being moved up a half step. So that gives you C major 7, which we could easily turn into a major 9. It really just depends on what you're looking to switch from one chord to the next to and what sounds right to your ear. So altogether right now we have D minor 9, G9, C major 9 to A minor 7. So that's the first half of the chorus. And then from there, rather than repeating the same chords again, the second half of the chorus is going from B half diminished again. So again, that's the 7th fret of low E, 7th fret on D and G, 6th fret of B. To our E7 flat 9. So our E7 shell chord plus the 6th fret of B. Back to A minor 9, A minor 7. And if you wanted to, you could follow the bass line as it goes through the turnaround, going back to the beginning of the chorus section, using octaves or single notes, whichever. Now, if you really want to draw in the actual, like, more authentic vibe of the song and the sound of it, what you're going to want to do is either get your hands on some sort of wah pedal or utilize an auto wah. Something that's going to give you that sort of swooping wah sound that exists in the song itself. And that will really tie everything together really well. And that pretty much sums it up, guys. I hope you found this lesson to be informative and helpful. If you did, hit the like button. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button so that you can catch all the lessons that I post up here when I post them up. And if you like what I'm doing on this channel and you would like to support it further, I'll leave a link for my Patreon down below where you'll have access to tabs for this lesson as well as other lessons I've done in previous videos. So yeah, check it out. But other than that, guys, that's all I got for you for today. I appreciate you checking the video out. I'll see you in the next one. Keep playing. Peace.